just to say a big thank you to our audience and a big thank you to you, Niraj, as well. I really appreciate you making time for this. I know you're a very busy guy, you go all over the world. Really appreciate it. But I also really appreciate our audience tuning into this as well because I create these interviews to help people and to be of service to people, showing you that there is a different way to live than the traditional way that we're often sold when we're growing up. And today's guest really illustrates that point. So today is episode 488 of the Simply Inspired podcast, and I am joined by Niraj Naik. Now, hopefully, I'm saying that the right way. Founder of SOMA Breath and a person who is having a positive impact on hundreds of thousands of people around the world with this unique form of breathworks, breath therapy, depending on how you define that. He has had an incredible transition in his life from a community pharmacist and a DJ to the founder of Summer Breath, combining music and breathworks. There's some incredible science behind what this man does, including being studied by Cambridge University. There's a lot of inspiration packed into this journey that we're going to be hearing about today. And really, guys, the intention behind this is twofold. One is to make the spiritual path or the alternative path relatable to all people. And the second one is to find out more about the science of these practices because it is absolutely incredible. I've been listening to Niraj's podcast with Mindvalley and with some other people as well. And the science behind how this really works, how it can change your life is incredible, including Niraj's recovery from ulcerative colitis. As a Crohn's sufferer myself, I know how brutal that can be. But he recovered when he was pretty much out of options, out of hope, and facing two big life choices, neither of which were very good, as I understand it, which we'll find out more about later before he discovered breathworks. So there's going to be a lot in here, guys. Stay tuned. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired channel. After you've listened to this, please have a Google of Soma Breath if you haven't heard of it before, and you'll find out, or just Google Niraj's name. It's not hard to find. You will definitely want to find out more about this if you're hearing this story for the first time. So thank you, everyone. And Niraj, as I've already said, thank you very much to you for making the time for this. I do appreciate it.
Great. Pleasure to be here, my friend.
Absolutely. So, okay, so starting at the beginning, as I mentioned already, we'll do a little bit about your life, we'll do a little bit about the science. But music is obviously a massive part of what you do now, but it was always a massive part of your life before as well. And I've come across like playing musical instruments as a teenager. I've also come across you running your own rave to a massive scale at a very young age as well, before you were a pharmacist. So, can we kick things off just by talking about music and talking about the love of sound and where that aspect began for you? Because it seems like it's been part of your life since the very beginning, or at least since a very early age, anyway.
Yeah, so music has been like ingrained into me from a young age from my parents. They're both like big into listening to music. They're not really musicians, but they have a huge collection of different types of mostly Bollywood and Indian classical music. But my dad gave me a gift when I was 14 that changed my life actually because he gave me a so is there sound that just
Tiny bit, but it's
okay.
nothing to worry about. There might be a little bit my side because there's actually some construction work going on over here, so we'll make the best of it. But no, nothing to worry about.
All right. So yeah, so my dad gave me a gift when I was 14 years old that totally changed my life. He gave me a little Yamaha keyboard that actually had uniquely at that time, this was like 14 years ago, so that was 32 years ago, right? At that time, it was very unique that this keyboard had the ability to create your own sounds on it. Right? You could make basic adjustments to the frequencies to change and modulate sound. So it also had a sequencer, so you could actually program loops. So those kind of sequences you see these days DJs using with loops, this was doing that 30 years ago, right? So I wasn't given any formal piano or keyboard lessons. So I was given a keyboard with no lessons. That was the best thing that happened to me. Tell you why, because I worked with a lot of different types of musicians, and I found that classically trained Like people who are like eight, grade eight, or higher, often struggle, not all of them, but often struggle with composition, thinking outside the box, being more unique and individual. And often the more classically trained you are, the less creative ability you have to compose. So that was one of the best things that happened to me, is that I wasn't given any lessons. So I had to figure out myself. And what I did was I used to listen to loads of rave tapes, and because back then we had cassettes, and they were like these mixes from like Fantasia and the Rat Pack and all these like big rave people, and then Orbital, Prodigy, Underworld, all these bands started appearing, electronic music bands, right? So especially the Prodigy and Chemical Brothers and people like that. So I got obsessed with that stuff, and I was like, I need to make music like that. So I used to come up with my own little electronic riffs and beats with this little keyboard. And then I actually got kind of good at it because we have rugby at school, but I was a small little Indian kid who used to get his head kicked in playing rugby. So I would always bunk off it and go to the music room where actually they had more of these keyboards. And with MIDI, you could link up keyboards and you could create like a kind of an orchestra of different synths. So this is what I used to do. And in the end, I got good at making music with different keyboards and started to do little gigs and little concerts with my friends. In the end, that turned into me running my own rave, 300 people. Then a super club opened up in my hometown, which is also very unusual. A place called Reading in the UK, not really the kind of place you'd expect a big super club nightclub, but it opened up, 2,000 capacity place, and I managed to secure um, the main, like once a month, a main event of my own, and we crushed it, and we ended up with over 1,500 2,000 people every month for 3 years. It was like the best thing, but also one of the worst things because it's a very hedonistic lifestyle. I got involved with a very crazy environment, people. Um, at one point I thought I was like the godfather of like this rave scene, and just stupid shit. And then I ended up like um, collapsing, losing everything, and I got screwed over a few times, and so on and so forth. And actually, then the best and worst thing happened to me again, which was first I had to finish my degree as a pharmacist because I was doing the raves during university, and then I had to start working as a community pharmacist. And it was the worst thing ever because I went from being on top of the world, running raves, you know, basically selling a lot of illegal drugs, to now dishing out legal drugs in a pharmacy with a suit and tie on, dishing out pills all day long. Very left brain job, from a right brain to a left brain, which wasn't suited for me. And also, I didn't believe in the business model of pharmacy. Like, as a raver, you're kind of naturally a hippie at heart. So you think more spiritually. And the business model of pharmacy is not a spiritually minded business because you go out of business if people get better. So the entire business is revolved around getting people onto pills, a subscription model for the rest of their lives, where they don't really get better. They kind of get comfortably numb, as Radiohead would have said, or uncomfortably because the side effects are pretty bad if you start taking them for long periods of time. So I saw all this going on. I just had no passion for this job. And in the end, like I would take all my bad habits from raver days and use that as a way of escaping on the weekends, getting completely off my head. And in the end, I like got so depressed. A friend of mine took me to a Tony Robbins event. This was around 2007, and that's where I first heard anyone talk about um, diet, nutrition, lifestyle interventions for preventing disease. So I was like, well, look, I got a pharmacy full of sick patients, right? I'm going to test this out, see if Tony Robbins is full of shit or not. Because we don't get taught this at school, right? So I was like, okay. And I decided to do it. I came up with my own method of giving out healthy information through the form of a healthy shopping list. People could understand and take action on very easily. And those who took my advice got better. It was very clear. And all I was really doing was getting people off processed foods. There's a huge correlation between fizzy drinks like Coca-Cola and processed foods and medications. It's night and it's just very clear. uh, relationship. It's obvious in the pharmacy. If they did a study on it, diet and the amount of pills you're on, it's obvious, right? Processed foods screws you up. So it was no surprise I got good results. But then I got fired from that job for mismanaging the pharmacy. And this is the funny thing. I didn't care. I really didn't care that I got fired. And this was like amazing situation I was in because I felt like I had a new method to help people, right? So in the end, long story short, I got promoted to head office of one of the biggest corporations in the UK, which have a supermarket and pharmacy chain. And they had this in-house Dragon's Den competition with Peter Jones and the CEO of this company. I'm not going to say the company's name because I'll be, incriminating them into what happens next. And basically, I did this competition. I won. They loved the idea. Got promoted to head office, and then I was going to work on a healthy shopping list service for their website. Right. So 6 months into it, I actually found out that the middle management had kind of ganged up to kind of shut the project down, water it down, and shut it down. So I don't know if why exactly the reason, but they did, and this project got very watered down. It was nothing like it was supposed to be, and in the end, I had to go back to being a pharmacist, right? Or try and get a job in the corporate head office. But I don't know if you've ever worked in a corporate head office. Man, it's like
I've
the
always
battery farm.
been, I've always gone my own way, Niraj, as much as I can to avoid the aspect of that that takes away part of your soul in those corporations, which I know is something you've experienced personally as well. Not to cut in here, but you also mentioned that the suppression of your love of music during this time
Oh, yes.
also affected you, and I just don't want to miss that. Only because carry on with what you're saying. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just feel that's really important because so many people are in that position where they have a dream and they've had to like squash it down to do
Yeah.
something else, and that's an important part. I just don't want to miss. But anyway, carry on what you're saying. So it was a watered down version. You had to get a job in a corporate head office, back to being a pharmacist. That must have been a nightmare. I
It
mean, how
was
you
horrible.
thought you'd escaped it, and then you were like sent straight back there. So how are you feeling at that time?
Well, it
And
was
yeah,
a series of like feeling like I keep failing, right? Like just keep failing. And here's one of the things that adds to it was one of the big rave events that tried to throw was where I did this big event in London, and the way it all happened was because my uncle could see I was depressed in the pharmacy. My uncle owned like loads of pharmacies, and he that's who I work for, right? And he basically said, "Look, I know you don't like this job. What did you used to do that made you happy?" I was like, "Well, I used to run these big raves and stuff." And he goes, "Well, let me fund you to do this again. Let's start another business." So I was like, "Okay, brilliant. Let's do it. I can make it happen again." So I went back into it, but without the same level of prep and team that I had before, and the same mindset of, things had changed a lot in that time. So I wasn't prepared and I lost loads of money. So it was another big failure. And now I'm in massive debt to a family member, right? So I was in a lot of shame. And this made me depressed. And also just doing the pharmacy job, you don't have much time. You're like 8 hours a day on your feet, right? You have 5 minute lunch break. Okay, super inhumane. We really should be as pharmacists suing pharma companies. Like this wasn't with my uncle. He had a better system, but the big pharmacy chains they just milk you, and pharmacists don't get to eat often, right? It's horrible. So um, so I had basically very little time to do anything that I really loved. And this is where I stopped my like making music. I tried a few attempts to get record deals and I actually broke through in a few, but I needed to finish the tracks to a certain standard. Like they were all great ideas, but the time it takes to do that, you need really to go deep. And if you're working full time, it's really hard to do what musicians do who are the best to make incredible like productions because they tend to spend days not sleeping just working on one piece right to get it right, and I didn't have that time, so I'd never quite finish the tracks and I'd never get these full breaks that I was supposed to do. In fact, I actually met the manager of Muse, and we became really close friends. Because what happened was my dad as well, he had a bit of a setback. He lost his job, right? I haven't said much of this actually publicly. My dad lost his job as well halfway time through the time I was a pharmacist. And he had a big high flying corporate job. So he became super depressed and he ended up having to drive a taxi. So a real kind of ego crash. And he's driving a taxi, a private like kind of chauffeur for CEOs of big companies, which he used to be like one of those peeps who would be driven around. So, um, but one day he's played at my demo CD. So I was still kind of making music, right? But I wasn't fully going into it at this point. This was like maybe a few years into being a pharmacist, 2 or 3 years into being a pharmacist. And this guy really liked this music. He just, I remember him telling me, um, he goes, oh, I got in the car and it was with your dad. He was the head of UK Trade and Investment, this guy. And I was like, he said, "Oh, my son makes music. Can I play you a demo of his music?" And he just went, "Oh no, it's going to be shit. What am I going to say? I'm going to be in a car with this guy for an hour and I don't want to be rude." But he played it and he went, "Whoa, this is actually really good." And he invited me to go on a trip to represent the British music industry. This is so random to India and as independent, they were taking independent record labels. So on this trip happened to be the biggest label bosses of the biggest independent labels. So one of them was a guy called Safta Jaffrey, who I want to give a lot of props to. He changed my life actually in many ways. He helped me to become a better person actually, and have faith and confidence in my talent. And he was a manager of Muse, a band called Muse. But his company, Taste Music, had also produced some of the biggest bands like Radiohead, The Verve, Coldplay, Muse, and so many other big bands, like all the Britpop, big Britpop bands. They all went through his production company with his producers. So he was on this trip, and we just totally clicked. So he basically said, "Look, I'm going to help you with your music career." But this was where it got to a point where I couldn't make that break because I didn't have time to finish the tracks. So time would go past, or I didn't just never quite finish the tracks to the standard that we needed to get the break. And also, he fell out of love with the music business because Muse kind of screwed him over, believe it or not. Another thing I haven't said, I know a lot of background information to a lot of shenanigans in the music business. But yeah, so they screwed him over and did a deal with Warner. He raised them since they were 16 years old, made them the biggest band in the world, and then they stabbed him in the back and went with a major record label who were basically wining and dining them and taking them to orgies, and things like that. And so he was like, "Look, I can't compete with that, but you're like my family, right?" And so he fell out with his kids. The Muse were like kids when he met them. So he was heartbroken. And actually, in the end, he started to discourage me from doing anything in the mainstream music industry. He was like, "This is not who you are. This is the wrong identity. I want to come to identity for you because this is the most important lesson I can give to anybody, actually, what I've realized." So, and breath has a lot to do with this part as well. So we'll get to that. So anyway, the identity of a rock star musician is is not the core values of that I have now. And my truth is who I am right now. And the rock star musician, and one of my best friends actually, he actually made the break, and he was a part of a band called Does It Offend You? Yeah, and they were a famous band for about 2 years in the UK. And I went on tour with them for fun a couple of times, and they would get absolutely horrendously shit faced every night, right? And all the fans were shit faced, and everyone's shit faced, and it was just like pure carnage of just debauchery and just madness. And it's fun. Don't get me wrong, I had a great time on tour sometimes, but you feel like shit for weeks afterwards. And in the end, you end up becoming a worse person. Like, the egos in that scene. I remember going with Safta as well, actually, to Mida Music conference. So this is the number one kind of convention where all the record labels and musicians go. So I went to him, and he's quite a big shot. So he had queues of people lining up to see him, right, for meetings. So I'm with him as a, like kind of his friend, and like each one, I'm sorry, like I hate to say it, but the douchebag level was high, right? The ego douchebag and the arse lickingness of that industry, the superficialness, the fakery, the lack of soul and spirit in music was at an all. It was just I couldn't believe it. Like this, the music scene I came from, the more underground rave dance scene, also had that, but it wasn't as serious as the problem of the mainstream music industry. So I actually remember like looking at Safta and he goes, "Mate, are you sure you want to be involved with this? Are you sure you want to go down this road?" I was like, "Yeah, you're right." Actually, you know what? I'll tell you a little anecdote. The guys who founded Spotify had a meeting. We sat down. We had a meeting, and after the meeting goes, "That's the end of the music business as we know it. That's it." This was like the early days. Spotify wasn't even a thing yet. They were just trying to sign up all the labels. Crazy. That's another story. But anyway, so getting back to the point. So yeah, I'd given up my passion for the music industry. I'd given up my love. I didn't feel like I was making art with any purpose or meaning anymore. The message had got lost, and Safta kept saying, "Look, you keep coming back from the pharmacy, complaining about the pharmacy and how corrupt Big Pharma is, and how they've been everyone's been brainwashed out of health, and you're always ranting. Why don't you do something in that world? Like that's where you're gonna make your break." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what?" And that's when the whole series of crazy events happened with Tony Robbins, and then testing things out, and then basically getting this job, and Safta actually helped him and my brother helped me get through the pitch to win the Dragon's Den competition and all that. So anyway, so then I got an autoimmune disease after they shut down my project. This big corporation, I got an autoimmune disease at the same time, called ulcerative colitis, and I think it's fear manifested as disease, as well as years of destroying my body with alcohol and shit food and just bad lifestyle and stress and so on, and heartbreaks and breaking up with girls and depression because you've lost the love of your life or whatever, right? Um, so basically now I am no job, can't be a pharmacist, housebound, shitting blood 40 times a day on a toilet seat most of the day, right? Losing a third of my body weight. And here's the thing, I went to the consultant gastroenterologist to ask her for advice, obviously. I was like, does food have any impact? Does diet make an impact? Does stress levels? You know, what can I do? Like, and she goes, nope, stress doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any influence. Diet doesn't have any influence. Shut up, take the pills. That's the only thing that's proven. So I was like, oh, fuck, this is weird. It's crazy. So then there was a point where the symptoms got so bad, and she said to me, you got two choices. One, have your colon removed because it's got so bad, or you can try this, be a guinea pig for this drug, it hasn't even been tested before. So they were the two options I had. So God stands for gift of desperation. In my most desperate moment ever, I went very inward, and I remember I had a very serious dark night soul moment, and I was like, I'm not going down that road. There has to be another way. And around that same time, uh, now a very close friend of my family, Swami Amakananda, my teacher, my mentor in so many ways. She said to me, you actually have a gift. If you can turn this around, you'll be an amazing role model to other people, who are suffering. And with your tenacity, your pharmacy background, and passion to help others, if you turn this around, this is your break, actually. So she had a prophecy that actually manifested exactly like that because Now I, now I have all those credentials, right? I healed myself from a chronic autoimmune disease with natural means, holistically, based on practices that are now getting scientific validation from ancient times. And I am a pharmacist, and I'm doing my passion as a musician. I've turned music into a healing art. So it started where she basically taught me the foundation of pranayama, of simple breathing exercises. And it just the simple breathing techniques was gave such a relief from stress. And I felt like blood was starting to go to those areas for the first time, right? And healing was happening. I was like, wow, what more is there to this? Because I didn't care about yoga, I didn't care about Ayurveda, I didn't care about meditation. I was like, what is that hocus pocus stuff? Because our generation of Indians, we are totally educated out of our culture, and we don't think it's cool. Only now is yoga cool, right? Back then, 30, what was it, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, in my culture, in my generation, it wasn't a cool thing to do. You didn't do, it's what maybe your grandma did, right? You don't do that. Even our grandmas don't do it, right? So I gave it a go. I had to let go of my disbelief and try because I had no other choice. And it worked. And basically going down that rabbit hole, I discovered this book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Dr. Joseph Murphy. Amazing book, read it. He's a pharmacist, but he fused Ayurveda with Christian science. And he created up this a process of scientific prayers where you can communicate to your unconscious mind. It's like praying, but in a meditative state, right? And it helps you rewire the autonomic nervous system because autonomic or autoimmune disease is a disruption of the autonomic nervous system. It's your immune system attacking healthy cells. It gets confused. And if you look at us evolutionary, all our cells came together at one point, right? Because single-celled organisms got tired of fighting with each other and competing with each other. So multicellular organisms came by single cell organism coming together on the basis of trust, love, compassion, right? Cooperation. And that formed us, who we are today. And so every cell in our body is built on trust, love, compassion, cooperation, right? And if you think about that, if you are in an environment, right, where you lose trust in God, humanity, faith in future, you are in a hostile competitive environment, right? So you don't feel like there's collaboration and cooperation. If you're in an environment where, because you do become your environment, where there's no love and self-love, right? There's a lot of hate, right? And if you are basically in an environment, a hostile environment where you feel like you're being attacked all the time, then your healthy cells get confused and they start to attack healthy cells. Your immune cells start to attack healthy cells, right? And that's what I think is what triggers autoimmune. And you can actually put it down to a checklist because often people have this. They have an Udin moment in their life, an Udin moment that triggers a disease. And Udin stands for an event that is unexpected, right? D stands for dramatic. I stands for isolating, so it only feels like it's happening to you and nobody else. And N stands for no strategy. So if you think about me getting the disease, it was unexpected, dramatic, isolating. I was housebound for a year, and no strategy. And if you look back at previous times in my life, when I lost my businesses, I failed all the time. This is similar, right? Similar types of Udin moments. So I've done this checklist with a lot of people with autoimmune disease, and I found there are moments you can pinpoint in their life that have triggered this because they tick the Udin box. And what you can do is to rewire that using this process of scientific prayers that we have in my school, SOMA Breath. But what I did was I found that this process of speaking to the unconscious mind, right, is much better, more powerful when we combine a few elements. Rhythmic breathing that changes your state, um, and music, transformational rhythmic music that alters your state, right? And guided hypnotic programming, or I call it neurosomatic programming, because you're programming the body through the mind. And so yeah, so I devised this own system for me because I was kind of copying others that were doing similar things, and I found that the music, like brainwave music, there was a lot of brainwave entrainment music to alter your state, was kind of really badly produced. I just didn't like the soundtrack, so I was like, I'm going to do it for myself. So I made my own system of scientific prayers through this plethora of techniques I put together, and it started to work, right? It worked. And what I tell you, what I can bring it down to is it changes your identity, your belief system of who you believe to be about yourself, right? So what happens when you have a Nudin moment? I think it changes. It's such a traumatic event. It changes your core identity, right? So instead of going from love, you go from love to hate, right? You go from confidence and courage to fear, pessimism, right? And low self-esteem and so on, right? It changes who you are. It changes your personality, these Udin moments. People might not be the same person again after a hit like that. So what this helps you to do is to start rewiring, reprogramming your belief system, your personal identity. And this is one of the things that helps invoke the change. But the other thing with the breath is that this sequence of breathing techniques, rhythmic breathing to a beat, followed by breath hold techniques, breath retention. When you hold your breath for 60 to 90 seconds, not only do you get into profound altered states, as we've shown through the Cambridge University peer-reviewed studies, but you also invoke this state called intermittent hypoxia. And intermittent hypoxia, when you take away oxygen for a brief period from the body, right, just for a short period, it makes your body adapt to less oxygen, right? And it makes your body more efficient using oxygen. And what it does is it starts to get blood flow back to cells that may have not had much blood flow before. And therefore, you can start to initiate healing through this breathing technique. There's a few people who made this similar process famous. There's like Wim Hof. He made he did it in the West, but before that was Baba Ramdev in India and Swami Rama, people like that. But it's just an old ancient breathing technique. And my Dr. Yogi teacher, who is the guy who co-created the curriculum with Soma Breath, he's called Prakash Maharaj. He really helped me understand the pure science of breathwork and pranayama specifically. So that helped me to create like a pharmacy of music-powered breath meditations that have this two-in-one method of healing you, which is the working on the emotion, your identity, but also your physical body through upgrading you at a cellular level.
So cut in with something there that, well, first of all, I mean, wow, it's an incredible story, Niraj. I mean, I've heard this in other podcasts, like your podcast with Vision and everything. Hearing it firsthand and going into a few things there that you don't usually go into, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, the perseverance that you had, the recovery, keeping trying, some of the serendipitous experiences. I mean, the universe has been looking after you, man. I can tell you that. I mean, I know you're always having an easy time, but there's
But you know
definitely
what?
been.
That's what I believe. That's the identity that I've installed in me. And I
Yeah.
had that when I ran the raves. Me and my best friend at the time who we ran it together with, we were like very hippie in that way. We really believed we were guided on a personal mission to make these amazing events and spread them all over the UK. I even created a dance music society at Cardiff University when I was there that ran for 14 years after I was gone, right? And
Wow.
I don't know what happened to it now. I haven't really checked, but became an institution there, and it became like a society that encouraged entrepreneurialism through DJs, through becoming a DJ and a promoter. So we believed that we were guided by a mission. When I failed, and then especially when I got just about to get sick, I had become more atheist and a bit more cynical, and I'd lost my connection with the divine, with God. Like I was full of like fear of humanity. I had no like faith at all in the future. I thought we're all doomed, we're screwed. But now, not at all. I'm like the most ridiculous, optimistic, confident that humanity is on an amazing journey right now to something great, and we're all going to be on the right side of history if we listen to that intuition and believe and have faith in that future. So
And can I say as well, Niraj, I really got to say this, not to go off topic, but I absolutely believe that people like yourself are a big part of the next phase of human evolution, basically, through the practices of what we're talking about, combining the science, combining the ancient practices, connection with the divine, self-awareness, which people haven't had the opportunity to do. There's a couple of other things I want to touch on here as well, though, just so I don't forget about them. Because one of the other things, when you're saying about like hypnosis and you're saying about like the reprogramming your subconscious mind, I've experienced that as well, the benefits. There's a lot of things you've been saying, other types of sound healing and not your traditional stuff. And I keep resisting the urge to go off on a tangent with this and a tangent with that. But there is a relevant point to our audience, which is obviously with Mindvalley and connecting with them, you also met your wife there.
yeah,
And I think this, I ask you this, not to probe into anything personal about your life, but it strikes me as a really powerful illustration of what happens when you're reprogramming the subconscious mind. And I hope you see the relevance of me bringing this up because, as I've already said, it's not like, your personal life. I'm actually saying because you said that you had reprogramming of your subconscious to do with like struggling with commitment and that type of thing. And you mentioned that on your podcast with Vision. And then you met your wife, and there's this whole cool story about it. And would you mind sharing a little bit about that in terms of not only meeting her, but like the actual science behind changing your belief structure? Because you're talking about identity. I want to say as well, you've answered a really important question in my life, saying about identity, which I won't get into here because it's off topic, but thank you. It's actually, you probably don't realize that, but it's actually really, really, really helpful. But then one of the best examples I've heard of that, as well as your own work, which I'd like to talk about a little bit more, is meeting your wife. So do you mind telling us that story, please, Niraj?
of
Thank
course,
you.
of course. Yeah, it's a cool story. So here's the thing, like being completely honest, right? When you first get into this kind of like creating an internet business and you got a product, you know, that's transformational and you want to get it out to the world, like you start to look at who else is like Tony Robbins always says model success, right? So I was like, okay, who else is doing this really well? And there wasn't a lot. There was a lot of like scams and get rich quick schemes and biz op stuff. But there was one company called Mindvalley and Vision who were astonishingly good at selling stuff through the internet that actually was useful and helped improve people's lives. And I'd got benefits from their stuff. So I was like, that's the guy I need to model, right? And then when you start to look into Mindvalley and you see Vision's office, right? It's just him with like the most stunningly beautiful women everywhere, right? All from Eastern Europe. And I have a thing for Eastern European women. And like, that part of the world. So this will freak you out even more. So you start to think like, how would I ever possibly attract somebody like that, like those girls? So then you find out, then later on, like you're starting to build your business, and this comes down to identity. Um, like you to get into that world of vision, you have to be really somebody. You have to be special. You have to have something big because he gets bombarded with so many people on his case, right? Just to stand out in maybe the 1,000 emails he gets every week, you gotta be somebody. So I was like, I want to get a woman like that. Like, it doesn't have to be from there, but to have somebody like that, I need to really work on myself and become the best version of self. Because your identity isn't something that's fake. It comes from your environment, what you've created, what you're putting out in the world and your credentials and so many things, like even your bank account, like all of that, it's gonna affect and influence your core identity, right? So I then actually ended up like going to a Mindvalley event, right, called A Fest. And like Vision didn't really pay attention. I was a nobody then. but I met all these amazing like women and people from that community, and I was like, that's it. This is my family. This, if I'm gonna get married to anyone, it's gonna be somebody like this, right? So a lot of people go to my Visions events to hook up and meet their love of their life, and it happens quite often. Like people meet at the Mindvalley events and then get married and shit. So the thing is, like most of his like team at that point lived in KL. And if you ever, I went to KL, I even visited. At this point, I got in, I went to visit KL and meet the Mind Valley office, and because I got friends with some of the employees. And then you go like, I don't think I want to have a Mind Valley girl because they all live in KL. Because I don't think I could ever possibly live in KL and Kuala Lumpur, and they're all location dependent, right? They're all stuck there. So I was like, you know what? I want an ex Mind Valley girl who is free, is a like a digital nomad because I'm nomadic now. By this point, I'm running an internet business where I can travel and go around the world. So I was like, she has to be digital nomad. So I actually like, believe it or not, astonishingly, uh, literally like I'm not kidding. Like so, when I put my mind to that and I started to do my SOMA breath methodologies to manifest. We have them. I know it's not woo woo. It's really like a scientific process. That's why SOMA also stands for the science of magnetic attraction, right? Because I've used this for many different things now, not just um, women and girls and wives, but for actual real life people and contacts and people that can help me make a bigger impact in the world, right? And it's crazy how things have happened, like from Wim Hof to Vishen to, I mean, there's a list of celebrity names I could tell you that I'm now personal friends with, the biggest influencers in our space. I managed to manifest eventually, right? But um, so how Natasha came about. So one of the big celebrity names is Marissa Peer, who became a close friend of mine, and her husband is my business partner in Summit Breath. He's the one who really encouraged me to create this school. And she has her own certification, hypnotherapy certification. So she had some students who had done that. One of them is a very close friend of mine, and she wanted to test it out, the hypnosis on me. So this girl Mariana, she asked me to volunteer. So I did it, and it turned out. So then what happened was a little while later, I went to this other Mind Valley event in Barcelona, and I had an amazing time. Amazing. There was about three or four incredible women that I could have definitely, like, if I could have settled down with probably. Like, they're all amazing. And some of them are very close friends. But because at this point, I wanted a relationship. I wanted to get grounded. I'd been living with tantrikas for a while. That's a whole nother part of my life, like in the tantra community in Thailand. So I wanted to actually get grounded, settle down, meet somebody who's really cool, and just like, because it gives you stability as an entrepreneur for sure. And I'd also read like autobiographies of successful entrepreneurs, and they all tend to be married and settle down, except for Elon Musk. But that's a whole other story. But he has just multiple of everything. But anyway, so I went with this intention, and then right at the end of this event, had invited me to party, DJ at one of the parties in Barcelona. They'd found out I'm pretty good with music, so I went to this thing, and I didn't DJ, and within 5 minutes, I locked eyes with Natasha, and we were all over each other, like completely obsessed with each other. And we ended up having a whirlwind romance for a few days. And we actually then realized that the other person Mariana practiced on out of that whole 400 or 500 people that were at this event was Natasha. So the chances of that, right, happening where for the both the same thing of unlocking um, commitment blocks and finding your soulmate. And I remember the day before that, Marissa Peer said to me like, um, how's the event going for you? I was like, it's fantastic, but I'd love to meet somebody. I've met a load of amazing people, but I'm not sure if I've met the one yet. It would be great if I could meet that one, you know? So she goes, don't worry, I'll find you someone. Boom, next day, I meet Natasha, right, in this weird situation. And we've been together since that. We have never not been apart since that time.
That's amazing. I mean, that is absolutely like what you were saying before about the whole identity thing and restructuring, and that is really something where it kind of, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of examples in your life, but it really manifests there, and I just love the story. I heard you telling that division, I was thinking, wow, that is really putting some of these things to the test, and I often say to people, I've had to rebuild my identity virtually from scratch, so I totally, that's a whole other story, but I know, I really, really understand, but amazing. Now, yeah, I mean, the last couple of things we'll touch on, we'll go slightly over the time I said, but not too much. Thailand, though, I mean, I've heard other references that you've made to like learning from other yogis and learning from other, like the tantric stuff and all different types of things. And you mentioned the lady that helped you in the UK, still a great friend now, gave the prophecy to you, you're going to help people with this, you're going to turn it around. But you obviously learned from some other people as well. And I'm curious about if there's any stories there that you can share that maybe people haven't heard about, like some of the other yogis, because you said in passing once, and only literally in passing, about superhuman yogis was the phrase you used in an interview somewhere. I can't remember if it was Visions or another one. And yeah, I mean, I've seen some of these guys. Obviously, you do the whole heart rate thing, raising and lowering that. And I know there's so many more applications, but I would like to go deeper into the yogic practices because the way you combine it, the ancient and the modern, is very, very unique. After that, I want to ask you about the dose acronym that you have as well, just so don't let me forget that. But in terms of some of the other yogis that you learnt from, can you share like a crazy story or something that maybe people haven't heard from before about like somebody you learned from in that sense?
Well, let me like try and make because it could become a very long story, but let me make it like as concise as possible. So
You should write a book, man. You should. If you ever
I'm
thought of,
working on it. I'm working on it. I
are
just
you? Oh, awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's so much here today where, and I'm sorry, but I just thinking, man, this would make a great book. It's like I do what I can in an hour, but it's like totally, if you wrote your life story, loads of people would read it, and it would really help people. So that's good news. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, the yogis.
Yeah, I should
Carry
write
on.
them.
Carry on.
So this like one of my core beliefs is the magic exists. It's real, right? And there's a science to making it happen. So it all that started when I started to really believe this. It was firstly when I met my best friend, one of my very close friends, John Vincent, who's an amazing magician, sleight of hand illusionist, right? But he hated that stuff. He got bored of doing card tricks and all that stuff, and he wanted to go into real magic, and which is like transformational magic, so NLP, hypnotherapy, and stuff. And he's brilliant at it, one of the best. So what happened was, so he started to really educate me, a lot on the real crazy things that can happen through, reprogramming the mind and all the effects you can get from that. So he was one of the first big teachers for me, to be totally frank, after my Swami. But around that time, what happened was, um, so I'd healed myself from this chronic illness, right, by this point, and similar breathing techniques I would do in the sauna. That was my church, was the sauna. So doing this special rhythmic breathing, meditative visualization techniques in the sauna, right, was I think is one of the most powerful things, and that's why all these Russian communities, Nordics, all that have it like their church, their ashram is the sauna, right? It's where they go and pray, meditate, manifest, and co-create and all this stuff. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could manifest other things? I've got healing down. What about something else? So this documentary comes on TV called The Secret Life of Uri Geller. Have you heard of Uri Geller?
Yeah.
He's the guy who bends spoons, right?
Yeah.
Supposedly, allegedly, with his mind. So this documentary showed how he was a CIA spy was proven by Stanford Research Institute for being a genuine psychic, and he did remote viewing experiments, with the military, and his best man was Michael Jackson, and he had all these A-list celebrity friends, and he lived in this insane mansion that looked like the White House in the UK. So I was like, I'm gonna manifest a regatta for a laugh. So I went off, did my thing, and here's the secret to manifesting. You have to forget you did it. You have to like not first it's got to be fun. You got to get really into it. You can't be distracted by other things. You got to be super focused on it. But it's got to be fun, not too serious. And you got to forget you did it. You have to forget you did the process. Like, don't have any expectations. Don't get attached and longing to the outcome. This is where people who try and manifest stuff fail a lot. And you got to take action, necessary steps. Once you have a plan, right? You have to take some action. So anyway, a few days later, my Swami calls me up. She runs a charity. She goes, guess who's coming to our charity dinner? I'm like, who? She goes, Uri Geller. I was like, what? She goes, yeah, how cool is that? I was like, she was like, you coming? I was like, fuck yeah, of course I'm coming. So I go to it, and there's this one point where he does his whole spiel on 1111, the mystical number that follows him around everywhere, and spoon bend. He does a few bending of spoons, and there's a really cool talk actually. So I was like, wow, this is cool. And then, but I didn't get to speak to him. I was like, ah, damn. Anyway, in the end, he had got a private table, and I was like, and I saw him walk in around the back. So I was like, this is my chance. I'm going to go over there and speak to him. So I go over, and he pulls up a chair. He goes, sit down. We're probably supposed to speak tonight. And he goes, tell me everything about your life. He's a very direct person. And he goes, tell me everything about your life. So I started ranting. He goes, oh, internet, that's cool. And he goes, give me your details, I'll be in touch. So I gave him my details, and I thought he was fobbing me off. By the time I got home, he'd already emailed me with his address and said, come around my house. And so I'm now like going to his house, right? I think it was September the 11th. Yeah, because now the 11 start to really kick in. So now I'm seeing 11 everywhere after that. So anyway, I go to his house, and he has this crazy mansion, and he's showing me where Michael Jackson used to stay over and crazy stuff. And then in the end, sits down and he goes, I've seen your business. I like what you do. I like you. I'm going to give you positive energy. How much do you earn right now? I was like, oh, he goes, is that all? I was like, yeah. He goes, all right, we're going to 10x this. Um, and I was like, okay, cool. Wow. And then we became friends for a bit. He then moved to Israel, but I'd gone off on my crazy adventures by this point. And this is where the adventures start. So he basically said to me, there's only one thing worse than bad publicity, and that's no publicity. So he says, you have to do whatever you can to get PR for your business. So I went and did my ritual for PR. Forgot I did it, right? And I go, and one day I'm checking my email. This is like a little while later, not that long after, maybe a few months later. I'd made basically, that's why action is important. I'd made a blog called The Renegade Pharmacist, and on that blog, I'd uploaded this article about Coca-Cola that I made, a really shitty infographic about Coca-Cola, what happens to your body 1 hour after drinking a can of Coke. And I made it for $5 on Fiverr, right? Put it up there. So I even did that. Then, a few months later, so I've done this ritual, a few months later, um, I get this email from Daily Mail saying, we'd love to reshare your infographic on Coca-Cola. He's like, oh, that's great. Yeah, sure, no problem. And I was like, why do you want to share it? He goes, oh, don't you know it's the #1 trending article on Facebook right now? I was like, what? She goes, there you go, yeah. So I looked on Facebook. At this point, they used to do trending articles on Facebook, and mine was #1. I was like, holy shit. And then Huffington Post, then the Telegraph, then the biggest media publications in the world, from Fox News to the BBC to everyone, contacts me. I started doing interviews. In 1 month, I became the most famous pharmacist in the world. And I was on the front page of these big blogs and stuff, like news.com.au in Australia and all sorts. I was like, what the hell's going on? This is insane. And Uri Geller messaged me, he goes, I hear Coca-Cola's lawyers are after you now. Have fun. Obviously he weren't, he was just joking. And so that blew me up. That totally blew up my website. My website now started to get hundreds of thousands of unique visitors a month, right? And that article got read by Wim Hof's son, who then invited me to do an interview with Wim Hof. So I'd already been checking him out. I was like, he does breathwork stuff like me, and I can't wait to meet him. So I'll go there, and we just had an instant bond. Like we were just like it was like kindred spirits coming together. And he's a really good musician, and we were jamming and in this interview, and he kept singing his song "Crazy Like a Monkey." So I was like, I'm gonna see if he wants to record that into a proper song. And he goes, "Fuck yeah!" And he goes, "Come and stay at my house." So he basically literally gives me the keys to his house, the van and everything. He invites me to move in, and he was like, "Let's make music." So now we start making music together, and I ended up making the entire soundtrack to the Wim Hof method. And during that time is where I saw real physical magic being performed in front of my eyes from this guy, Wim Hof. Like he was doing shit that you cannot comprehend. That I'd never seen anyone do anything, and this was real stuff that can be scaled, not some hocus pocus, one time weird magician type stuff. No, somebody who could have a scalable technique that could actually genuinely awaken superpowers. And the cool thing was it was very similar to what I was doing already with the breath holds and all this stuff. So I was like, this is it. I found the guy. I found it. This is it. So we became like partners for a bit, and um, we even went on tour and did some events together and all this. And but he became so famous, and it became very hard to work as a you know with that kind of a movement that was going on. And they're very much a family business. So I was like, I'm going to make my own school then, and I wanted to do more beyond um, just one breathing technique. I wanted to do all my breathing techniques that I use to heal myself and make a proper holistic pharmacy and make it like a sister company to Wim Hof and put music to everything and make it musical. And what I realized was going back to when I healed myself, it's all about breathing to a beat, breathing because all pranayama techniques revolve a lot around rhythmic breathing to a beat. Okay, so counting either with mantras or malamis and all this stuff. So that's the origin of how Soma Breath came about, basically in the end. But that just to go a little bit back in time. So Wim was the first superhuman yogi, genuine that I met. Then I met the next one was so around that time I started to research more science. I wasn't fully there wasn't enough clarity from the scientists who studied Wim on the real mechanism what made it work. I'm a pharmacist, so I'm very deep on that stuff. I understand science quite well. So I started to do my own research, and then I found a guy in India called Prakash Marsh who had um, written an entire published paper on intermittent hypoxia and this ancient revered pranayama technique called Nishesha Rachaka, which is basically the same thing pretty much that my Swami taught me, right? That helped invoke the healing. And I was like, this is it. This is it. This is the science. This explains everything. So when you hold your breath for a certain period of time, you actually wake up stem cells out of the system because stem cells hate oxygen. They hide in areas of the body there's no oxygen. So stem cells come out, all these feel-good neurotransmitters come out. You create a dose of anandamide, the chemical of bliss, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. This cocktail of feel-good hormones that makes you feel naturally high. It helps you get naturally high, happy, and healthy. So anyway, I reached out to this doctor and I was like, he's a medical doctor with Ayurvedic clinic, allopathic clinic, and Ayurvedic all together. So he treats patients with both. So I was like, I'm going to see if he'll have me as a student. So I reached out to him and he invited me to go and study with him. So I went out there, trained with him in person, and I saw this guy do crazy stuff. He's 70 years old, do more crazy stuff than Wim Hof, more crazy yoga moves, just insane. And he had all the science behind it, right? He was a doctor. And he's a very humble, very, very genuine, very like unassuming guy. He doesn't want any limelight. I've tried to get him to come to stuff, but he's just no, no, quietly doing his practice. And anyway, so that helped. So we co-created the curriculum with Ref together. And then after that, I started to go on mad adventures, meeting um, tantrikas. I ended up like doing a lot of sex magic rituals, and um, I mean, this is before even, sorry, the India part. This is prior to that.
Hold on, sex magic. I mean, I'm sorry, to jump in here, but I mean that sounds pretty crazy. I don't know how much you can say about it, how much you want to say, but the whole tantric sex and all that type of stuff, like the energy exchanges and this kind of thing. I mean, is that true? Because it's like, even though I do all these meditation and breathing and mental health stuff and hypnosis and all these things myself, I've heard people say about that, and it's like, okay, yeah, doing breathing during sexual activity, deeper bond, energy exchange. Cool, I can get my head around that. But I've heard about some other stuff and it's been quite flaky, and I just thought, I don't know if that's really real. So I kind of just carried on with life. But so you're saying there is an actual, like a more grounded kind of basis to this. Can you mention that briefly? We'll wrap up shortly. I want to ask about this. I want to ask about the Cambridge study. We'll wrap after that for the sake of time, because I said an hour and we're going to be like a bit longer. But I want to ask about this. I want to ask about the Cambridge, and that's pretty good. But yeah, that tantric. I mean, in terms of the actual applications and like the useful side of it, How does that really work then?
Yeah, yeah. So let me just actually reverse a little because it I missed out one little piece, right?
Okay,
So
sure.
the when I'd met at Regatta and all this crazy stuff's going on, I wanted to go to India in search of real magic. Me and my friend John, we decided to go there in search of real magic, authentic proof of superpowers in real, genuine um, people, right? And I was like, India's where it's at. So we went there and we saw loads of charlatans, loads of fuckery, fakery, and ended up in like a place called the Love Temple, and they were doing sex magic rituals. That was the first time I did it. That was the first awakening I had, and I realized that there's something to this. Later on, I figured out how it works, right? And there is definitely something magic to it. There's so that was where I first started to learn about this rhythmic breathing using energy locks to raise the vibration. And there's a science now that I can explain. It relates to Cambridge University, right? And identity shifts from what I discovered in this Tantra community in Goa, right, in India. So I got involved with a few crazy practices there while I was there, but we were going there for real magic. So we debunked all these fake yogis, but there was this one guy who we met in Bangalore who was a world memory master. He could memorize thousands and thousands of words and numbers and tell you the orders of them and all this shit. So I was like, let's see if he knows if there's any other supernatural people. And he goes, you know what? I've got something for you. So he showed me these after school workshops that had become franchises all over Asia, in places like Malaysia, Japan, Singapore, India, all over. And where they would do this special third eye activation techniques that would awaken super sensory ability in children. It would make, firstly, the side effect of that, it would make them have a whole brain connection, fully formed corpus callosum connection, where the left and right actually communicate better together. And they would suddenly have this awakened super sensory ability where they would be able to see completely blindfolded with an intuition that's so powerful that they can literally, you could completely blindfold them, right? And they will be able to read text messages off phones. And there was these kids going down the street, busy street, you know the traffic in India, riding bikes through the traffic. I was like, wait a minute, this is insane. So I said to John, let's debunk this because he's a professional magician. John said, look, I can do this. These are blindfold tricks. So he showed me it and I was like, oh damn, fuck. So, but I was like, okay, let's see it. I can't believe this scam could have got so big. So we got the guy to do a workshop and we got these 20 kids and we set it up and we made it as foolproof to debunk these kids as possible. And a lot of kids cheated actually. There were three kids with undeniable magic powers. Imagine this. So the kids here, we would take a ball, random ball. We had all these different colored balls. We'll take a random ball and place it behind his head like this, right? And we'll tell him to tell us the color. And he was getting it 8 out of 10 times right in a row, 9 times out of 10. We would make it harder and harder, and he started to get it 9, 10 times out of 10. I was like, the only way he can see what's going on is if he has a sixth sense, right? A genuine sixth sense. It was insane. So then we were like, right, we're gonna bring this stuff to UK. That's a whole nother story. But what happened was on that research to find like the methodology, because I then ended up learning how to do it and I activated 3 kids in India. During that time, we did so John said the most difficult card trick in the world, the most astonishing, is when you can make a deck of cards separate into red and black perfectly. So you take any deck of cards, randomly shuffled, and you separate them into red and black. And there were some sleight of hand magicians who can do that trick. It's the most famous trick of all, right? But we were like, let's set this up in a way that it's even more difficult than what the magicians do, where it's face down. The cards are face down. The kid is completely blindfolded. There's no way he can possibly see. It's impossible. We tested it and everything, right? And let's see if he can do it. And he did it. And I was like, what the fuck? And here's the thing, the kids in this school, they basically become more kind, more compassionate. They become smarter, more creative, and they just upgrade in all areas of their life. And the great thing was how their emotions balance. So I'm like, you know what? This is it. This is it. We found the method. So all of these methods that they do on the kids is much harder to activate in adults, but I have put them in our SOMA breath curriculum as part of the training. And what happens? So anyway, so these were the crazy proofs of magic.
That's
So
incredible.
so
That's
going back to
incredible.
what you're saying, and these school, there's one. If you go to YouTube and just type in third eye or children third eye England, right? You'll see there's a kid in England that does it, and this guy goes there. He's a friend of mine called Frank now. We got to become friends not that long ago. He went into a school and he tried to do the same thing, debunk it, and and completely blindfold the kids and like test it out for real. And he also showed that it's genuine stuff, right? So why I stopped doing it, right, is because I went to the UK and I actually recruited the guy who made Horizon and Dispatches to make a documentary on this. He was blown away and he was like, I'm going to pitch this to all the news stations. And I managed to get a business partner to invest in creating a proper school franchise, like a Montessori type school franchise. So I had it all laid out. We were going to do a documentary, launch the school off the back of this. I'd activated 3 kids, so I knew it worked, right? And then I said to Uri, "Will you be our will you help us promote this school?" And he goes, "I'm not touching that with a barge pole." I was like, "Why? What's up?" He goes, "If the moment you put this out there, the media will come down on you. They'll shut you down. They'll ridicule you. They'll make you look like a woo-woo crazy guy, and it'll be the end of you." He said, "I advise you strongly, do not go ahead with this." All right. So I was like, "Oh shit!" And then the dispatches guy, the documentary guy, goes, "Mate, I'm pitching it to all of the big TV channels. No one's interested. They're not interested in a technique that's scalable. They're only interested in one-off, like freaks, not a scalable method." And I was like, "What?" So they don't want people to have these powers. Clearly, they don't. So he couldn't get a pitch, and then everything just fell apart. And I'd met Wim Hof then after that, so I got sidetracked into the whole Wim Hof world then. Um, and the rest is history. But yeah, going back to Cambridge. Well, what was the question? It was Cambridge, right? The Cambridge
Yeah,
stuff.
well, first of all, I gotta say, like, there's definitely a theme with your life as well of like the light and dark forces and everything. I mean, I'm just gonna put it like that. I mean, we all know it's going on, and obviously, when people say about the term light worker, in other words, there's people like yourself making the world better in whichever format we're talking about, and it's all different things. You're making a positive difference, and there's obviously then opposition to that. And I love the way you stand up against it. I mean, it takes some massive balls to do what you do as well. So, I mean, here we go. But yeah,
Yeah,
what was the
I don't
question?
believe you can be a genuine light worker unless you've been in the dark side.
Oh yeah,
You
big time,
can't, you don't understand light and dark unless you've been in both worlds.
big time, big time.
Yeah.
And it's a cool theme that stands out to me. But anyway, what was the question? I mean, yeah. So we were talking about the tantric stuff, and then we were talking about Cambridge, primarily Cambridge. And like, look, I said we're going to be an hour. We're going to be like hour and a half. So we'll wrap on this one. But the Cambridge study. I mean, first of all, it's so inspirational because I've seen you saying about like your family saying, go and get a degree at Cambridge, and you saying, look, now Cambridge is studying SOMA breath. So first of all, that's really cool. But also the studies they actually found, I mean, sorry, the results they actually found from the study, I mean, to say, is incredible as well. And again, I've seen you talking to Vision about this and other people as well, and the anxiety, the depression. But I mean, you were there. I mean, it's your thing. So basically, what did they find, and what was the process with that? Because I think this will finish the interview nicely on a cool high point of actually being
Yeah.
studied by Cambridge. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I think so. The Cambridge thing was a real surprise to me because they're a very, very credible institution. And when I'd got the 21 days protocol that I'd created rolling out, the results were just phenomenal. The testimonials and everything. And I was like, this would be so good if it was validated, you know. And then like, I'd set a strong, so I do these manifesting like rituals with my breath technique, and I do it in the sauna. We were running retreats at this point in Ibiza, and I saw the future. I saw soma breath everywhere in everyone's homes and having even hospitals doing it. And when you set a big vision like that and you see it clearly, that's a presupposition, right? That a bunch of stuff has to happen for that. There's presupposition of things that have to happen for that outcome to happen. And one of those things is credibility, right? So this is how manifesting can work as well, is that if you have the right clear vision, right, and you do the necessary action steps to create the conditions for that thing to manifest, the universe will start giving you challenges to grow into that vibration, but also it will give you opportunities. And if you take them, magic happens because they all lead you towards that bigger goal. So one of them was, I think, this whole Cambridge University thing, because I suddenly got a random email. Like they were like, "We love what you're doing. We want to do a study on breath work. We've chosen your technique because it's scientific, it's easy to measure, it's scalable because it's everyone's breathing at the same time in a rhythm. So it's like a prescription really. Because with normal breath work, there's no rhythm to it. There's no pattern. It's you don't know if someone's like doing like it really fast or they're doing it slow or there's no consistency. You can't measure that. Whereas with soma breath, it's a protocol. It's like you breathe all in a certain rhythm, and you hold your breath at the same time, and all of this. So like we want to have your method as the basis of the biggest breathwork study done to date. Um, and would you be up for it? I was like, fuck yeah, of course. So then I did a whole study with them on our 21-day awakening journey. And so what they did was they used very intricate brain map EEG machines with then also a participant going into their lab and on an even more full power advanced equipment. And they basically showed, right, that from the outcomes of patients doing the altered states questionnaire, it's a famous questionnaire for altered states, and from the brain map studies and just the patient results, just what happened to the patients, they said that you have a method that could be a non-pharmacological alternative to things like psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine used to treat severe depression. And the only way you can treat severe depression is the result of an identity that's malfunctioned, a depressed identity that's been formed, right? The reason why psychedelics work is because it shifts that, it shakes it up. and it starts to see yourself in new light, so you change your identity. It creates identity shifts. And that's why a single dose of psilocybin can make somebody a new person and wake them out of depression. Now, what we prove now with Cambridge is that my method, in just 20 minutes, has the ability to invoke a identity shift in the same way like psilocybin works, similar, not exactly the same, but similar, that can also take people out of these depressed states, low states into high states. And and the fact that it's like also a non-pharmacological alternate to psilocybin means that firstly, breath is in your control. It doesn't run out, and it's something you can do a little bit of every day. So you can create your own microdose techniques or macrodose, and you don't have to be taking substances. Or you can take a little bit of psilocybin and do our breath work together, which are very popular. The Stamets stack with Soma breath works very well together. Do it niacin, psilocybin, lion's mane, very good stack. And you can totally upgrade who you are from the core level. So going back to identity, so what I really believe is that back in the day, I had a toxic, depressed, anxious, angry, frustrated identity where I didn't believe in anything good existed anymore, had no faith in God or humanity or anything. And through all of this crazy transformation, what happened was I shifted my identity into someone who believes in magic. It really exists, that we can create magic. We all have the power to transform. The power's within us, and there is good in the world. And if the world is actually, the future looks bright. So I've changed my identity through this wild process of transformation, through a lot of experiments and trial and error. And what I try to do with Soul and Breath is to take all of the things I've learned over all these years to make them into a process that was as easy as taking a pill, or as close to taking a pill as possible. And the closest I've found to that is breath, and it's specifically this breath sequence with music, which is makes it fun. The music makes it engaging, something you look forward to doing, not something that becomes boring and monotonous. You just love doing it because you love the music, and it drives and guides the breath. It becomes a breath meditation. And so I believe now with the Cambridge University studies, we have proof this method can change your life, transform your, upgrade your life, right? If you do it consistently and make it into your practice.
Absolutely. Powerful. I mean, wow, we've covered some ground today. It's crazy because we've only scratched the surface of your life, but that whole thing with the actual message behind it all, super powerful, super meaningful, what the world absolutely needs to hear. And like I've already said, next phase of human evolution. And I'll tell you something, I'm really grateful for this today, really, really grateful from my heart. I knew we would meet, talking about manifestation. My dad actually played one of your meditations on Mindvalley to me, and like we listen to different ones as a family. We're all into this kind of thing, and I heard your voice. And bear in mind, at that point, I'd never actually seen your face or anything, and I literally just heard your voice. Okay, there's this guy called Niraj, and you were counting and doing the breath. I thought, okay, I know I'm going to meet this guy, and I just had a really strong feeling from it, right? But like what you were saying earlier about forgetting and everything, and then I didn't think much of it because I thought, okay, I feel that that's there. I feel it's in quite the near future. It's not like really far out, and I'm going to meet him, and there's something to this. And then what was weird is I went on my LinkedIn to check my connections. You were a connection on there, even though I don't remember actually sending
Oh,
the request specifically, right? Hence, I first contacted you. You said, yeah, sure, email me. And Angela works with you, helped me set
yeah,
it
my
up.
assistant, yeah.
Shout out to her. Yeah, great job there. But I emailed you and I thought, okay, like I don't actually know how you got on there. And people could say like, oh, I work with LinkedIn. I have a virtual assistant as well. Maybe she added. I checked. It doesn't look like. And I was thinking, okay, however you got there, I was then able to contact you. I would have anyway. But the fact you were there, like bang like that, I thought, okay, this is definitely meant to be. And some people would say, oh, that's a coincidence. But you know, anyway, that's it's not. That's another story. And I just knew we would meet. And so to actually sit down and have this today, absolutely awesome. As I said, you've answered a really big question for me about the identity. But everything you shared, it's going to help so many people. And I really appreciate the vulnerability, the heart-centered approach, the openness. sharing about your life. Absolutely incredible. So just a big thank you to close out. Once again, I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And I look forward to reading your book, Niraj. When that is out, man, let me know or keep an eye out for it because we'll hopefully read that or 100% will read that. Um, I'll send you this when I release it as well. I don't know if you're able to reshare them or anything,
Of course.
if you're able to do that, but that would be awesome. But yeah,
This is a
just
good story. It's more, I've never been this deep on my personal story in a
really
podcast. Yeah.
okay, really, that's cool.
Yeah. Most people just want to know about the breath work and science and stuff like that, but this is the first one where we went really deep on the whole story.
Hey, that's cool. I'll say that's a nice compliment in a way. I'm glad you felt comfortable to do that. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to know about like your inner journey, and obviously that's really what we've spoken about today. I know we've touched on the science and we've given that, but there's a lot of people out there who get into that and they break it down really well. And my style is like even when I don't try and go deep, we just end up going into deep topics anyway. So I go, okay, cool, we roll with it. Like more than 480 of these, so it's like okay, I'm used to it now. We roll with it. But it's really nice that you felt comfortable. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.